exhale, everything's drawing into center. So that's when we're going to keep that core integrated. Let's start on our backs. And let's find the triple S. So as you lie down, feel the back of the skull, bring the chin slightly toward the throat so the back of the neck feels long. Feel the shoulder blades on the ground, your back ribs on the ground, and feel the sacrum right above the tailbone. So let's just pause there. Take a few breaths. As you inhale, try to feel the breath expand all the way into the ribs, front, side, and back. As you exhale, feel the rib cage naturally contract back in. Inhaling, getting that full expansion. Exhaling. Bring your hands to your pelvic points. You can either do palms on the pelvic points or fists. And feel the area between those two pelvic points tighten or draw in as you exhale. So right away, waking up the core. We'll take a breath in. Exhale, engage the core, draw those pelvic points in, flex the right hip. So pick up that right foot, knee comes over the hip without arching the back. So keep that sacrum down. Inhale, step the right foot down. Exhale, draw the pelvic points in, pick up the left foot, knee comes over the hip. Inhale it down. Exhale, draw the pelvic points in, pick up the right foot, keep your sacrum on the ground. Inhale, lower the right foot. Exhale, draw those two pelvic points in, pick up the left foot. So a couple more times, you're just alternating, flexing one hip at a time. So we're prepping for some more challenging movement that we can move the hip without moving the pelvis or moving the rest of the spine. So that's part of our integration, is being able to isolate where we want to move. And can we move the hips and keep the pelvis and the spine still? Sinking it with the breath to help us integrate the core. Good, both feet come down. Check in with that long triple S. Hands can stay at the front of the pelvis or they can come to the thighs. Let's push down into the feet. Give your glutes a little squeeze as you lift up into a low bridge. Stay low enough that you can feel your back ribs and your shoulder blades still on the ground. Let's think about integrating the core here, feeling those two pelvic points draw in like you're tightening your waistband on some sweatpants. We'll hold steady in our bridge. Reach that left palm up toward the sky so the palm is flat. And we'll pull back with the right fingers, stretching into that left wrist stretch or left wrist extension. Keep pushing into the feet, glutes stay active. Don't let those front ribs pop up. Switch hands, right palm up, pull back with the left fingers. Feeling that wrist extension or that wrist stretch on the right side. Keep the tailbone reaching toward the heels. Bring your hands down, either to your sides or on your thighs. Take a breath in. On an exhale, engage the core, lower down one vertebra at a time. Try not to pop those ribs up toward the ceiling. Lowering with control. Once you get that sacrum down, let's interlace the hands behind the head. Cupping the skull, draw the elbows in. Take a breath in to the side and back ribs. As you exhale, draw that X from rib to pelvic point. Lift just enough that you come off the shoulder blades. So we kind of want our front ribs pulling in and down toward the pelvis a little bit. Inhale to lower. Breathe into the ribs. Exhale, draw that X from rib to pelvic point. Lift off the shoulder blades. Chin is toward the throat. Back of the neck is long. Can you stay off the shoulder blades but keep your sacrum down? Inhale to lower. Exhale as you lift up. Let's draw those pelvic points in. Feel your belly button try to pull down toward the sacrum. Stay off those shoulder blades. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift up. Feel the ribs contract back in. Draw the pelvic points in. Hold your sacrum down. Let's try to lift just your right heel off the ground without anything changing the spine. Lower the right heel. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift up, draw that X from rib to pelvic point, lean your head back into your hands, lift your left heel up without changing the sacrum. Lower the left heel, inhale, lower down. Let's release that. We'll pick up the right foot. You can keep the knee bent or you can extend that leg up. Let's circle that right ankle a couple times in both directions. Now we'll bend the knee if it's straight. Let's bring knee over the hip as we circle. Circling that right hip both directions. Try not to move anywhere else. So if you're feeling a lot of movement in the lower back, make your circle smaller. Now bring knee over the hip again, so that right hip is flexed. Hold that triple S down externally and internally rotate that right hip. So it just looks like the right heel is swiveling right and left like a little windshield wiper. The movement is coming from inside that right hip. Pause in that external rotation. Cross it over for your figure four. Now again, let's check your triple S, staying integrated with that neutral spine. Feel the shoulder blades, the back of the skull, the sacrum. If it feels good, right hand can come to the right thigh. A little gentle push away, but keep the feeling of kind of drawing down into the sacrum. So not popping the ribs, not arching the lower back. Release that right foot down. Let's do that on the other side. Pick up the left foot. Knee can be bent or you can extend the leg up as you circle the ankle. Both directions. Bend the left knee without changing the pelvis or the spine. Let's try to circle that left hip, both directions. So they might be the tiniest circles. Pick up that left foot, so knee is over the hip. Let's move to that external and internal rotation of that left hip joint. So sacrum is staying down. We can think about drawing those pelvic points in, holding really steady and integrated so we can isolate this left hip. Pause in that external rotation, cross it over, figure four. Chin is slightly toward the throat. Keep the ribs from popping. Maybe left hand comes to the left thigh. Wherever you are in your figure four, try to focus on inhaling into the ribs, front, side, and back. As you exhale it out, feel the ribs just gently and naturally contract back in toward the body. Release it down. Let's hug the knees in. Take a couple rocks side to side or up and down. Rocking along the sacrum. And we'll come into a seated position. Sit however you like. Let's check in with our neutral spine here. So as we sit, we want ears over the shoulders, shoulders stacking right over the ribs, and the ribs stacking over the pelvis. So our nice integrated neutral spine. Let's start by bringing the right ear to the shoulder. Now make sure this left shoulder doesn't hike up. Keep it down. If it feels good, you can even draw the chin down toward the collarbone. So a little side bend and a little rotation. Bring the head back up. Keep that neutral spine as you bring left ear to the shoulder. Now keep that right shoulder down. If it feels good, let the chin lower to the collarbone. Bring the head back up. Let's bring palms forward, wrist arm extension. Really try to spread the fingers wide. Start at your pinkies. Now look at your hands. You can alternate just looking at both hands. Try to lower just your pinkies down. Just the ring finger, then the middle finger, index finger, thumbs will cross in front. Pull your knuckles back in toward the forearm. Hopefully you can get a little stretch there as we flex the wrist. Let's circle the wrists, both directions. We're going to do that one more time, coming into that wrist extension. Spread the fingers, start at your pinkies. Try to lower one finger down at a time as far as it will go before the next finger moves. Crossing your thumbs in front, curling the knuckles back. Flexing the wrist, take a breath in and out. Circle go both ways. Now let's do a quick side bend because we'll be doing those later. So let's reach this right arm up. Now we want the shoulder blade to lift up. We want kind of the right side of the armpit to lift up. Everything on this right side of the torso is going to lift straight up as far as you can. Hold the ribs in. Maybe we take it into a little bit more of a side reach or a side bend, kind of like a diagonal to the left. So we're not trying to go super low. We want to stay lifted in the right side of the torso. You can let the left ear release to the shoulder if that feels nice. And then come back up. Left arm up. Now we're not just holding it here. Let's elevate that scapula, lift it up toward the ear. Feel everything on this left side lift up, but keep the ribs from popping forward. Reach it a little bit more toward the right. So we're not sinking into this left side. We're just focused on elongating through this, or right side. We're elongating through this left side. Let's come to quadruped. You can be on fists or you can be on your palms. Let's walk the knees in a little bit snug toward the hands and find our triple S here. So in quadruped, let's imagine that we have a broom taped behind our back, touching the back of the skull, the shoulder blades, and the sacrum. So everything is in that neutral position. We're integrating the core, which means we're not dropping the belly or arching the back, and we're not dropping the ribs down. So hold the front body nice and strong. Slide your right toes back. Hopefully nothing changed in that triple S. Now really firm that right glute as you float the right toes up. We'll bend the knee in this three-legged quadruped. Hold everything else still as we start to pulse this right glute. So we're using the right glute to extend the hip. These are little hip extension pulses. But if you're really moving everywhere else, we need to rein it in, make the movement smaller, and integrate the core. So maybe we're picturing that X from rib to pelvic point. Maybe we're drawing those pelvic points in. Whatever visual is helpful for you to not move anywhere but this right hip right now. Lower that right knee down, recheck the spine. So notice if we've lost that neutral in some way, lift the front of the throat, slide the left toes back. Now using this left glute, let's give it a little squeeze to float the toes off the ground. Bend the knee, pulse this left hip. So we are using the hamstring too, but if you're feeling it a lot behind the thigh where the hamstrings are, you can tap on this left glute. You can just think left glute, left glute. Now notice if those ribs are dropping toward the ground, have we lost any of that core to support our neutral spine? Zipper that pubic bone up toward the belly button. Hold strong in both arms. Lower the knee down. Let's get off the wrist for a moment. You can take a child's pose. You can come onto your forearms. Anything that's going to feel best for you. You're welcome to add some wrist rolls or some kind of movement with the hands. And as you're here, let's take a couple of those 360 breaths. Can we feel the rib cage expand? Sides of the ribs and back of the ribs as you inhale, creating more space. And then can you take that full exhale? Let's come back to quadruped. So coming forward again, we'll cat-cow, shoulders over the wrist, or again, field fist if that feels like a better option. Inhale, let's extend the spine. That's arching the back. Exhale, push into the hands, round your back, allow the shoulder blades to spread away from each other. Flexing the spine. Inhale, extend the spine. Exhale, flex the spine, moving with your breath. Any pace that feels good. So we're trying to mobilize the spine itself. So getting this nice universal flexion and extension. We're also stretching the muscles and the fascia at the back body. So pulling on the back of the pelvis and then attaching all the way up to the shoulders and the neck. Let's pause in our cat. So the back is rounded, neck is released, really pushing into the hands, round the back as much as you can. From here, we'll tuck the toes, lift your hip creases right up to down dog. Weight stays in the hands and the arms. Heels stay super lifted, knees are nice and bent. Now feel the front ribs lift up and away from the ground. Feel the armpits lift up. Really press into the roots of the fingers. We'll pedal the feet out, bending one knee at a time, stretching into the calves if that feels good. You can also gently nod the head, yes and no, if that feels good for the neck. Big bend in your knees. Now we're going to try to keep that neutral spine. So integrate the core. Walk the hands back for happy squat without rounding. So put as much of a bend in the knees as you need. We're in that triple flexion of the ankles, knees, and hips. Hands can be nice and high. Let's check that neutral spine and then push into the feet, rise up. So we're at the back of the neck. Let's pause here and we'll check that nice stack. Ears over the shoulders, shoulders over the rib cage over the pelvis. Let's do some of our hip hinges here. So bring your hands right to the front of the hips. Inhale, slide the hands down as you sit back into the hips. So we're coming to that triple flexion. Exhale, push down into the feet. Use your glutes, rise back up. Try to keep that neutral spine. Inhale, hinge like we've got that broom taped behind your back. Exhale, push into the feet, rise up. So keep going, check your chin. So try not to let the chin go forward. You're going to be more likely to arch the lower back. So everything is connected. Let's stay integrated. Chin is slightly toward the throat. Don't let the ribs droop down. So we're holding that core container nice and tight. Come on up. Bring one hand to the sacrum, one hand to the back of your skull. Align that triple S. Check that the ribs haven't thrusted forward. Let's pick up the right foot. Stay strong in this left hip and glute. Step your right foot forward. Hold strong in that right hip and glute. Pick up the left foot. So we're flexing one hip at a time. Step it forward. Pick up the right foot. Does not matter how high it lifts. Let's stay integrated in the core. Step it forward. Last one. Pick up the left foot. Hold that neutral pelvis and spine. Step it forward. Make your way to the front of the mat if you're not there. And we'll get started. So let's reach those arms forward and up. Lift the shoulder blades up, but make sure your tailbone is reaching straight down, not out behind you. Exhale, hinge with that feeling of a broom behind your back. Nice long spine by bending the knees. We're starting in quadruped. Now find that neutral here, chin to the throat, not spreading the shoulder blades apart, not rounding the back. Nice neutral spine. Tuck the toes. Inhale here, feel the rib cage expand. Exhale, rib cage contracts back in, draw that X, engaging the core as we cover the knees and lift to down dog. Weight stays in the arms. Inhale here. Exhale, draw that X, engage the core, lower the knees back to quadruped. Untuck the toes, right foot steps forward, 90-90 low lunge. Lift up. Pause here. Let's check in. Do we have that triple S? Would a broom touch the back of our skull, shoulder blades, and pelvis? One hand can stay at the sacrum, one hand's going to come to the front of the pelvis. And just squeeze those hands in, making sure our pelvic bowl is upright, not tipping forward, not tipping backwards. So find that neutral. Core is there to integrate so that we can keep the spine neutral. Give that left glute a little squeeze. Now keep the feeling of your hands squeezing in, but reach the arms up into your low lunge. Shoulder blades lift up, fingertips reach up. We're going for this side lift on the sides of the body. Tailbones reaching straight down, just like when we're standing, lifting our arms up. Hands or fists come down. Let's come back into quadruped. Pausing here. Hold your neutral spine. Lift the throat, lift the ribs, slide the right toes back. Now firm that right glute. Use that right glute to lift the toes up. Maybe we reach that left arm forward. So opposite arm or bird dog position. Have you lost your integration here? Are we arching the back? Are we popping the ribs? Are we dropping the belly? Where can we find a little bit more of that core support so that our neck, our shoulder blade on the right side, and our pelvis is in that neutral position? Breathe here. Picture that glass of water balancing on your lower back. Lower down your quadruped. Left foot steps forward. Right knee stays down. 90-90 low lunge. As we rise up, check that stack. Ears over the shoulders, shoulders right over the ribs, ribs over the pelvis. Give that right glute a little squeeze. One hand comes to the front, one hand comes to the back of the pelvis. Squeeze them in. Remember that pelvis is a bowl. If we're tipping forward, that water is spilling forward. And if we're tipping backwards, the water is going to spill backwards. So keep that bowl upright. Reach the arms up. Shoulder blades lift. Fingertips lift up like someone's grabbing you by the wrist and lifting you up toward the ceiling. Let's integrate the core here. Picture that zipper that goes all the way up the front of the body. Hands or fists come down right under the shoulders. Quadruped. Align that triple S. Chin to the throat. Lift the front of the throat. Check in with your shoulder blades. Find a neutral. Draw the pelvic points in. Don't let anything change as you slide the left toes back. Firm the left glute, float the leg. So even by just lifting that left leg, make sure you haven't lost that core connection. So if you're feeling achy or grumpy in the low back, find a neutral pelvis, zipper that pubic bone up. Pelvic points draw in. Stay here or reach the right arm forward. Can we lift the ribs up here, lifting the front of the throat? Notice where it feels like gravity's kind of pulling you down toward the mat, and do your best to lift away from the mat. Lower down. Any option that feels good. You can cat-cow. You can take some kind of child's pose. You can tuck the toes, come to a down dog. Your choice. Wherever you end up, take a couple of those 360 breaths. So can you feel that full expansion as you inhale, ribs contracting back in as you exhale. Walk it forward. So we'll all meet in that bent knee forward fold. Push down into your feet. Keep that neutral spine all the way up. Arms reach forward and up. Shoulder blades lift. Tailbone reaches down. Get that length in the spine. Exhale, keep all that length as you hinge forward so hips move back. Quadruped. Find your neutral. Tuck the toes. Let's inhale here. Feel the ribs expand, front, side, and back. Exhale, engage your core. Draw that X from rib to opposite pelvic point as you lift up to down dog. So a lot of core work here to not sink down toward the ground during that transition. Take a breath in your down dog. Exhale, draw that X, engage the core, keep that spine neutral, back to your quadruped. You can untuck the toes or keep them tucked. We'll step the right foot forward. 90-90 low lunge, option to tuck the left toes under. Lift up, check that stack. Let's bring left hand to the sacrum, right hand to the back of the skull. Now check the chin, don't let it lift forward, bring it slightly to the throat. Keep the skull right over the shoulder blades. Now tighten your left glute a bit. We'll inhale here. Exhale, draw that X, engage the core, rotate the chest just 1 or 2 inches to the right, teeny tiny. Inhale back to center. Exhale, engage the core, draw that X, rotate from the center of your chest 1 or 2 inches right. Inhale, so keep going like that with the breath. We're using our core to rotate. We're not rotating, thrusting the ribs or arching the back, and we're not rounding the back. So we've got to keep that core integrated so that we can turn and rotate just around the ribs, not having any movement here in the pelvis. So nice and steady. Good, hands or fists come back down, quadruped, set up that neutral spine. Picture it just like a plank. So we're using the core here to just keep ourselves in neutral. Right toes slide back. Use the right glute to float the toes up. Bend the knee, but instead of glute pulses this time, let's externally and internally rotate the right hip. So we did this on our back. It's kind of like the heel is just swiveling side to side, but we're not opening the whole pelvis. So we're not turning in the low back here. You should be pretty still in the low back. like you've got that glass of water balancing there. So we're trying to keep the core integrated so that we can keep our pelvis and spine neutral as we move the right hip. So a lot of core here, keep both arms straight and strong. Lift the front of the throat. Lower down to quadruped. Left foot steps forward. You can tuck the right toes if you'd like. Lift up for that low lunge. Check your triple S. Would that broom touch the back of your skull, shoulder blades and sacrum? Right glute is firm. Left hand at the sacrum, right hand at the back of the skull. Now imagine that your belly is trying to pull back towards your hand that's on the sacrum. Breath in here. Exhale, draw that X. 4 is turning us to the left without turning the pelvis. Inhale back to center, so it's a small rotation. Exhale, tighten that right glute, rotate from the very center of the chest to the left. Inhale back. Exhaling to rotate, use your core, draw those pelvic points in. Try a couple more. Keep that tailbone reaching down. Keep the ribs from thrusting forward. Hands come down, quadruped. Option to be on fist. Neutral spine here. Picture that broom behind your back. Left toe slide back. Lift the ribs. Float the left foot up. Bend the knee. Hold everything else still as you externally and internally rotate that left hip. So the whole time, let's think about drawing those pelvic points in. Lifting the front of the throat so we don't want our ears dropping below the shoulders. We're trying to keep that neutral spine, neutral pelvis as we mobilize this left hip. You've got that imaginary glass of water on your lower back. Lower it down to quadruped. Any option, down dog, cat cow, maybe a child's pose. If you're in down dog, you're welcome to pedal out the feet or add a little swivel. Anything that feels good, but hold strong in the arms. Lift the ribs up and away from the ground so we're not dropping down into the shoulders. Wherever you are, let's walk it forward. Bend knee, forward fold. Spine stays long, big bend in the knees, push into the feet, reach those arms forward and up. Shoulder blades rise up. Hands come down. Let's check our neutral spine, keeping the core integrated. Let's step the right foot back. Soften that right knee. We're in a high lunge. Doesn't matter how far you step that right foot back. Let's check in with the pelvis. So picture it like that bowl. We don't want it spilling forward. We don't want it spilling backwards. So draw those pelvic points in. Let's do left hand at the sacrum, right arm up. Lift the right shoulder blade up. Let's try that little side reach. So we're not really trying to bend low. We're going to lift the right side up and just slightly reach it over toward the left. So that's going to give us a bigger pull in the right hip flexor or the front of the right hip. Keep the ribs from thrusting forward. Tailbone continues to reach down. Good, come back up, release the hand, continue to turn to the right. We're coming into a squat, heels in, toes out, bend your knees. Let's do one hand at the front of the pelvis, one hand at the back. Squeeze in. So just enough to keep a little pressure there so the pelvis stays upright. Let's pulse the legs. So this is something we do all the time, but can we think about staying integrated? We're still working the core here. Can we keep that stack? Ears over the shoulders, shoulders right over the ribs, ribs right on top of the pelvis. Pressing into the feet, legs are super active, glutes are working. Good, straighten your legs. Let's step it back to the front of the mat. And we'll do that on the other side. Check your neutral posture. Left toes come back, high lunge. Pelvic bowl is upright. Tailbone is reaching down. Pubic bone is zippering up toward the belly button. Right hand to the sacrum, left arm up. Feel your belly button, try to pull back toward the right hand on your low back. Reach that whole left side up. Keep the ribs from thrusting forward. Add a little reach, kind of like you're trying to reach toward the ceiling over to the right. Tailbone stays down, left glute's got a little squeeze to it. Breathing here. Come back up, turn to the left. Heels in, toes out. So hips are externally rotated, whatever amount feels comfortable. Knees and toes are tracking the same direction. Compact the front and back of the pelvis. Little pulses. And as you pulse, see if you can check in with what the chin and the neck are doing, what the shoulders and the ribs are doing, and of course, what's happening at the pelvis or lower back. Straighten your legs. We're going to stay facing the side of the mat and just parallel the feet. So you can take the feet out as wide as you'd like. We're going into our side lunges. You can have your hands on the thighs. You can have your hands somewhere on the hip creases, whatever is helpful. So as we side lunge, we do this in every class. Let's pay attention to that spine. Are we moving with that neutral? So again, check the chin. If we're looking forward with the chin, we're pretty likely to also tip the pelvis. So let's try to find that neutral, elongated spine from the tailbone to the crown of the head. Not letting those ribs drop down toward the ground. So we're even, keeping the core integrated and active here. So that we can mobilize the hips, getting this nice hip flexion, little side to side movement for the hips, a little stretch for the inner thighs, while we keep the pelvis and spine neutral. Come up, we'll come to wherever you'd like to stand. Just a quick little moving balance today. Hands can be anywhere. You can do front and back of the pelvis, you can do skull and sacrum, something on your ribs, whatever helps you feel integrated in your core. All we're doing is alternate march. So alternate hip flexion. Sometimes I like to do hands on the sides of the pelvis, right around the glutes. That helps me to see if I'm sagging into my standing hips. So if you just keep a little bit of that compacting in, you can stay really supported in that standing hip. So whatever works for you. Now check in. Are we rounding at all? Are we arching? So can we hold neutral? Stay integrated as we move from right foot to left foot. And as we challenge the core by flexing one hip at a time. Let's make our way back to quadruped. We'll just do a quick little movement here. Anything that feels good, of course, it can just be cat-cow. You can circle. You can do some swiveling movements. Whatever's nice. Let's come into a seated position. Sit however you'd like, but of course, let's sit with that neutral spine. We'll close the eyes. Take 2 more breaths here. Focus on how much you can expand around the rib cage as you inhale, creating space for the breath. And then as you exhale, try to empty it out. Feel the ribs contract back in. And we'll just finish by sending one grateful thought out into the universe. Thank you for doing class today.